Welcome to the Nerd Party.
I think people are perverts.
I've maintained that. That's the foundation of my career.
Welcome back to House of Fincher, the show on the Nerd Party Network that is exploring the works of David Fincher one step at a time, leading up to the release of his Netflix-only film, Mank, starring Gary Oldman in 2020. I am pleased to welcome you back. My name is John Mills, and I am doubly pleased to be joined by these two gentlemen for this show, two esteemed podcasting hosts in their own right. The first, Brandon Shea Mutala. Brandon, how are you tonight?
I'm doing okay, and I'm really glad that you finally decided to show up. I've been basically doing this thing all by myself here, and you've been going back home for your weekends, and, it's just not cool, man.
I'm going to keep that a secret for now, but also with us is Tristan Riddell. Tristan, how you doing?
I'm doing okay, but I need it noted that I'm only doing this because the forces of evil told me that I needed to do it.
You know, it's very important to follow the voices of evil because they do tend to steer you. Well, actually, no, they don't tend to steer you in the correct direction. So maybe we'll revisit that a little bit later on. And of course, if you want to revisit the show and let us know what you think, you can go to thenerdparty.com/contact. Drop us a line there when you look up House of Fincher. You can go over onto Apple Podcasts or any of your feeds or podcatchers or whatever you want to call them and drop us a star rating and review. Let us know what you think of the show. And of course, over on Twitter, you can find us at Join Nerd Party, and you can find us as the Nerd Party on Facebook and Instagram. So we find ourselves now, season 2 of Mindhunter, the last thing that Fincher has been directly involved with before going into Mank. And this is a big, pivotal moment in the life of any show. Your first season, you've established your relationship with your audience. You have taught them what to expect. Fincher comes back to direct the first few episodes of this season. And so let's start with the inevitable question. And I'm going to toss it to Tristan here. Tristan, when you came in on season 2, how excited were you? And did the first few episodes live up to your expectations?
Yes. Yes, they did, because I was very excited for season 2 just because I was so blown away with season 1. I was so utterly excited and happy for season 1. Yeah, there was certain things that didn't work for me, but overall, it's just a fantastic season. And to find out that David Fincher is going to be directing the first 3 episodes on top of us getting a new season is just icing on the cake because, as we know, and as we talked about in House of Cards, he only directed in the first 2 episodes of the first season. I thought maybe he was going to follow that template, but again, he already broke that template in season 1 of Mindhunter. So I feel like I want to know why. I want to know why. Like, is he more invested in Mindhunter? Did he grab onto Mindhunter more than he did House of Cards? Did he have more fun with Mindhunter than he did House of Cards? Was it a scheduling thing? Was it because, other movie stuff was going on? I don't know. Like, maybe I shouldn't read into it too much. But it's definitely a positive, whatever it is. It's a positive because we got more David Fincher directed episodes. And my favorite episodes of season 2 are the first 3. And I think it was a really great collection of episodes. I feel like you could definitely watch them back to back, like all 3 at once. And just like you could watch the first 2 episodes as of season 1 as a kind of a prologue to the beginning of the story. These first 3 episodes definitely felt like a reintroduction to the characters and where they are now and where their psyche is before we get into the main Atlanta storyline.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a very fair point. And actually that, in terms of watching everything as a single unit, I'm always struck by the ending, the ending of the episode where Bill's wife says, I can't believe that happened in this town. And Bill reaches over to turn out the light and just very matter of fact says, happens in every town. Turns off the light, and then Tusk by Fleetwood Mac kicks on. Just the way that the end credits music has been used in this entire series is like it is textbook. People should sit down and watch this if they want to learn how to use music effectively at the end of an episode. But here I've gone and interjected myself there. Brandon, when you're coming into season 2, are you really excited? Is there a lot of momentum for you coming out of season 1? And did it meet or subvert your expectations for how the season was going to go?
I was very, very excited when it was coming out. I can't remember how long after it came out I started watching it. I'm sure it was pretty quick. I hadn't watched season 1 in about a year because there was more than a year between these two seasons. And so I had actually forgotten the plot point about why Holden was in the hospital right at the beginning. I had forgotten that. But I mean, they give you enough information that you're able to remember, which is very well done. But overall, like right from the get-go, you hit the ground running with this show, and the season, in my opinion, doesn't let up. And the season definitely exceeded my expectations because of how high my opinion was of season 1, and the fact that season 2 ended up surpassing that for me. And I believe that season 2 is a better show than what season 1 is. And I only have one small problem that I'm sure most people don't have, but there's only one thing in the season that I'm like, and that's just, it's minor. It's very, very, very minor, and you'll probably think I'm weird by saying
we'll definitely get to that. But just to close out the discussion of this part of the first 3 episodes, I think that what's fascinating is it's not just that the first 2 episodes of season 1 and then the first 3 of season 2. It's that we have a string of 5 episodes in a row. So sort of the question that you were asking, Tristan, about was he just more invested? Was he just more interested in the topic? I'm going to go ahead and say yes, because House of Cards is an interesting thing. It's, it's a fascinating sort of topic. It's got interesting characters that you can follow, that sort of thing. It didn't really work for me because of my certain tastes and everything, but I could recognize what it was going for. Whereas with that, Fincher comes in, tees up the first 2 episodes and says, okay, you've got a template, you know what to do. With this, he is more involved to the point where I think he really truly cares where these arcs go. He wants to have as much say and as much control over where things are going to go and eventually end up, because he's just that invested in the topic, I think.
And also on top of that, to give credence to your opinion and hypothesis, is that season 3 is on indefinite hold. And it's because David Fincher is doing other projects. He wants to produce season 2 of Love, Death, and Robots. He wants to finish Mank. And so he felt like it wasn't fair to hold the cast and crew under contract while he's pursuing other things. Now, some people might be asking, well, I mean, he kind of, he let the reins go on House of Cards. They went on for many seasons without him. But with Mindhunter, it's not, if David Fincher's not involved, it's not going to happen.
Right.
And so I think that is probably the biggest piece of evidence to say that you're right, that he is much more involved with Mindhunters than he is with a Mindhunter than he is with House of Cards, and he's much more invested and probably interested.
Yeah, and I think that the furlough of the actors, if you will, the timing of it seems, and forgive me for thinking of it in these terms, because I'm always sort of going for the joke sometimes, but in all seriousness, if they were under contract right now, was there some sort of obligation to continue paying them in some way? But right now, as we record this with the state of the world, it's not exactly like they're going to be going on to other projects. He's not running a huge risk of somebody getting picked up by another show right now. So probably there's some sort of there's got to be some sort of business aspect to it as well.
Oh, I think definitely. I think there has to be, because there are certain contracts where they say, like, it says, like, okay, as soon as they're ready to do a new movie, like, say that, like, you say that you signed a trilogy deal, the 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 production company is the one that has the power. The actors have to do it, but the production company doesn't have to make the movie. So, like, if the production company decides to make the third movie, the actors have to do it. But it's not like the actors go, "Hey, you promised to do a third movie." Doesn't work that way. And so with that, it's a little fungible, because if the production company says, "Yeah, we are doing a third movie," and the actor's like, "Well, like, it's been years. I already signed on to do this movie and this movie and that movie," they have to work with those actors in order to get it done. And if they can't work with those actors to get it done because they have other contracts going on, they either have to buy out that contract, or they have to recast that character, or there's so much craziness going on and so much business and financial decisions that, honestly, when you have a TV show that's in limbo, it's just like, okay, well, we're not canceling the show. Maybe we'll just come back to it later.
Let me ask you this question, Brandon, based on that part of the conversation, because Tristan mentions in certain circumstances you'd have to recast. And so let's stay focused here on these first 3 episodes. One of the things that I know that I personally really enjoyed with the first 3 episodes was seeing a lot of focus given to Bill, because I love Bill and I think he's a terrific character, and I think Holt McCallany does an incredible job portraying him. That doesn't take anything away from anybody else. But I would look at that character and I would say, you cannot recast that, no matter what. Period. End of sentence. Based on just looking at these first 3 episodes, do you see any of the trio that could be recast, or is this a deal where it's all or nothing?
It depends. I think pretty much it's an all or nothing. But, I mean, we got the exchange of their boss, right? So, I mean, like, yes, that added a plot point, but I really like the guy that came in. Now, he's not recast because he's a different character. So I think that they could write the story in a way that they could, with I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, but the casting director that we've been recently calling out as being so outstanding, I'm sure she would do another excellent job in finding a person to take a role should that unfortunate need arise. But I do kind of agree with you, though. Out of all the characters that I think are replaceable, it's probably Bill who's the least.
Yeah, I would have to say, like, with the caveat of what you just said for the first 3 episodes, I would say if all I was to judge was by the first 3 episodes, I'd say Anna Torov's character would probably be the most replaceable, just going off of these first 3 episodes, because I really like what they did with her character in season 2 and where they took her and the relationship she had with the bartender. I love that storyline. And so if you told me in season 2 who could be replaced, is it all or nothing, I would say it's all or nothing. But like I said, just based off of these 3, she doesn't have that much to do.
See, that's interesting, because as much as I enjoyed her role this season and the story that she did, to me, her relationship with this bartender was as dismissible to the plot as Holden's girlfriend relationship in season 1. They were good and they were enjoyable, but I don't know that it's as necessary to the plot. What do you think?
The only way I would say that it's integral to the part, to the plot, if you will, is because it gives a lot of shading to the scenes where they're discussing the, at the time, classification of homosexual tendencies. And so her clear discomfort with the way that they're saying things, which are all based on what was just accepted things to think, even in professional circles, seeing her relationship outside of here gives a lot of impact to those scenes in specific. Do you need to go into as much of an arc as her relationship goes into? That's a point you could argue. I would say that for my money, I actually found that aspect of season 2 extremely relatable in a lot of ways, because I think that it asked a lot of very interesting questions, not just in terms of the way that things were clinically classified back then, but in terms of the fact that you had a real... in season 1, Holden has this very bizarre, dysfunctional, you learn a lot about him in the way that he changes, in the way that he's an empath, in the way that he sort of functions on a certain level that these other sociopaths do, to a much lesser extent, but he functions like that. Whereas you see with her character that it's a much more human relationship, that for her, she's not as affected by these clinical things that they're doing on a personal level that Holden is. So you get this immediate, and the thing is, that's a parallel with what's going on with Bill and his wife. So you see these sort of two relationships operating outside of their professional arena.
Mm-hmm. See, the thing with this relationship is that we find out this stuff about her in season 1. We find out that she had a relationship, and then she decided to give that up because of she wanted to pursue the work. And, it was her teacher, her mentor, who was trying to convince her to stay, because where she was before, it was a more open city. So they were able to go out and have dates out in public. And then, so she gave up that relationship. She came here. She has that conversation about homosexual tendencies and how she clarifies and said, no, it's not a disorder anymore. It's a sexual preference. And then we get this story of her after that. And, while we learn a lot about her character and we learn a lot about Holden's character with his relationship, in this we learn more like that she is more reserved at home, and she doesn't quite know how to be herself here. So she does get to be a bit firmer, which ends up letting her be able to say, you know what, I don't want the hypocrisy that you are getting mad at me for. You're doing it to yourself and your family. So I don't know if this would maybe be something to see how her character would change over season 3 and 4. So maybe it would become more essential. And I mean, as much as I want this show, I'm kind of looking at this as like it's done after 2, because I don't want to get my hopes up, right? So right now it's kind of a dead end plot for me, but maybe season 3 would have a lot more to do with the change in her character. Which I'm sorry, I can't remember her name because I'm bad with characters.
No,
I know it's Anna Torv.
Yeah, no. I mean, the thing is, you're raising very fair points. Like I can absolutely see the argument.
Like how much time did we spend watching her try and feed that cat?
Yeah, I think that possibly on an emotional level, there are aspects of her relationship with the bartender that struck a chord with me from some of my own past relationships, one in particular. And so there's sort of that moment where actually when she breaks up with the bartender, of all things, this is not a type of relationship I've had in the strictest sense, but it speaks to great storytelling in the sense that it's not a specific situation I've been through, but it becomes universally applicable to something that can give you catharsis, seeing that conversation between them at the end and the way that breakup goes.
I want, since you brought up the breakup, I want to ask you about that. I didn't like the breakup at all.
Really?
I was really taken aback by it. I felt like it came out of left field. I felt like she was coming on too harsh, because I was really invested in the relationship and I really liked where it was going, and I understood that they had issues. And Brandon, I think you hit it on the head about the hypocrisy, about the she was really angry at herself for her own hypocrisy. The bartender was on her own hypocrisy, and she was taking it out on Wendy. But then Wendy said that she didn't want to put up with it. Like that kind of fight, like that. I understood both sides, but at the same time, I was like, "This is the bartender." I can't believe we can't remember her name, but like this is the bartender's life. This is her family life. These are her kids. Also, this is 1980. We should understand where people are coming from with their private life, with their sex life, and with their family life, and how everything is segmented and compartmentalized, especially back then. And so I kind of felt like Wendy wasn't fair to her girlfriend. I felt like maybe they could have a fight and an argument about it, but I was just like, is this really a breakup time? Like, is this really an issue to break up over? Like, it felt just so strange to me because I wanted to see him keep going.
Right. And it's different because there's a kid involved. And, like, while I talk to my kids about, homosexuality and different relationships and things like that, I mean, like, again, this is 1980 and things are a bit different there. And she was in a relationship and had this kid. And so it's not the same thing. So I agree. Is this a breakup thing? I don't think that it is. So I did think she overreacted when she broke up.
I think I can understand her, in parentheses, overreaction. I can understand it because there are a couple of different levels at play, but at the same time, since we talk about how this relationship informs her own feelings and decisions, this is the point where the pressures of her own life come together and she's making a decision. And we might find it harsh, but I think it's completely understandable to say, I can't deal with this level of complexity when I'm dealing with that level of complexity at work. She has to keep things tightly under wraps at work already, and then she's compartmentalizing and she's keeping this over here. And then to be in a relationship with somebody where you've opened up so much and then you find out that they're not being completely honest with you about how much they're willing to share and how much they're willing to make that a two-way street. I can completely understand, because emotions are this sort of thing. They boil up and they get big.
Well, that I get. Like, if you explained it that way, that I understand. And if she explained it that way, I would understand it too. But I felt like there was just so much anger coming from Wendy towards her.
But see, anger is a function of hurt. When somebody is really hurt, they get proportionally angry. Not everybody cries when they get hurt. Sometimes they yell. Sometimes they get mean, because that is a defense mechanism in and of itself, because you take that negative energy and you turn it into an attack force, basically. And that's exactly what she's doing in that moment, is she's really hurt. And so she is just going to lash out. And I think I think it makes her completely human and completely relatable. And in a sense, to get back to the catharsis thing, again, I haven't lived that specific experience or anything like that, but I have had a breakup where everybody's had a breakup where in retrospect, you think to yourself, man, I wish I could have told them off on the way out the door, and so it does become cathartic where it's like, yeah, you suck too. And then you get to march off and win. So, it happens. It happens. But Tristan, you said something about the compartmentalization. And that's one of the things that I think is really interesting about Bill's life, in that Bill doesn't tell anybody about what's going on, and he keeps it completely separate from his professional life. Brandon, I'll ask you first. Do you think that type of approach to life, that type of mentality, is at all attainable in today's age at all? Is Bill going on Twitter and talking about this immediately after it happens?
I don't think he's going on Twitter and talking about it, but I mean, I think not being able to, because Holden's mad at him multiple times, right? And to be his close partner and not divulge that information to him, especially after what Holden went through, and him having to kind of cover for Holden and whatnot, for him to not be able to reciprocate and say, hey, I've got this thing going on in my life. I mean, he opens up to Wendy and tells her about it, but not until much, much, much later, And I mean, I couldn't do this. I'm an open book. If I got a problem, I'm telling everybody. So, I mean, just to watch him go through this, it's painful to watch in a good way. This is my favorite plot of the season, is watching this stuff go on, because I think that I don't know if it's the writing or the acting, right? But Holt McCallany is he's such an amazing character, and seeing him be able to do all these different things, the pain he's going through in his marriage, the frustration in the, how Holden's not even really wanting to be a part of this investigation, the jokes that he's got to be cracking at this FBI retreat, he's got to be maintaining these three different faces. And I mean, this must be just an insane period of time for this man in his life. And for him to be so calm, like, I mean, I wish I was like this as a husband. Honestly, like, he's calm and he's able to talk with his wife. I mean, like, I lose my patience frequently and I wish I didn't. And I see this guy talking and how calm he is. It's just like, oh man, like, I wish I had that patience and that calm in my life.
But wouldn't you say that is Bill's professional training coming to use in his personal life?
It could very well be. I never thought of that. It could be very well true.
I always felt like Bill was very old school. Like I feel like his character is definitely from a different age than Holden's character is. And I mean that figuratively, not just literally, not just like he's older, because, he was friends with the first FBI director. Like he knows everybody there. He's the one making the toast. He's the one, giving out the fishing reel to the retired director and everything like that. Like he's a company man. He's there. And so I feel like he's kind of a relic of days past where work was work, home life was home life.
Mm-hmm.
And, like you might have a beer with your coworkers every now and again, but you probably just talked about sports. It's that kind of stereotype. And it's today, in 2020, like we have to go on retreats together as a team. We have to do trust falls. We have to go canoeing. We have to talk about our fears, and like we have to build puzzles together without talking with each other. I love my job. I have a very good job, and I have a fantastic team. I hope they're not listening to this. I have a fantastic team. I really do. And I'm not making this up. It's the best team that I've ever worked with in my entire professional career. Like, not one single person is a bad egg in my team of 15. But I don't care about what your summer vacation plans are. I don't want to see you in shorts because we have to go canoeing together. Like, it's just like, I respect you as an individual. I'll even be friendly with you, but we don't need to go have a beer. We don't need to go to happy hour together. Like, we can do great work together. And yet there's certain times when I'm made to feel like I'm a bad person or a bad coworker because I want to go in, do my job, be friendly, say hello, and then leave. And I feel like Bill is very much that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I very much relate to Bill on that level.
I am Bill.
We've established that you are, like, between the two of us.
Yeah, no, but
you are very much Bill and I'm very much Holden.
But I'm talking in that context. The only thing people at work know about my personal life, and I'm not as closed down as Bill, I guess. But the only thing that people know about me in my personal life at work is what I tell them, what I allow them to know, things that are inescapable. I am going on vacation this week. That is what you will know. Or I have X number of children. I am married. General area of town in which I live. I will not connect to anybody I work with on social media. Full stop. Never going to happen. And I think that there's an interesting interplay there, because I think seeing the way Bill functions, I wind up thinking back to the finale of season 1 and think to myself, would he have reacted to I know he would not have reacted to the Kemper situation the way that Holden did. And that in and of itself is a function of the ability to compartmentalize, to not have everything bleed over into one, because in season 1, it's Holden, everything is all one giant tapestry. Both Wendy and Bill are able to keep their personal and professional lives very separate, to the point that people don't know even what's going on in their personal lives. Mm-hmm. And so season 2 is almost seems like a response to the question in season 1 of, would this type of work break you? And season 2 seems to say it won't, if it all depends on who you are, on whether it can break you.
I really want to jump in real quick, and I just want to, I never really thought of it that way, John, but I think that is a fantastic perspective what season 2 is. And I think it also, Brandon, I think that might be a comment as to why Wendy's relationship with a bartender is important, because that asks the question, does this job break you? You know, we focused on Holden so much in season 1 and how it affected his personal life of like with the shoes and, you know, how he's reacting, how he started getting arrogant. And then at the very, very end of season 1 and the beginning of season 2, we see it break him. He has a breakdown, and he struggles with that breakdown for a portion of season 2. And then he kind of passes the baton onto Wendy and her relationship. How much does that relationship bleed? How much does that relationship bleed into work, and how much does work bleed into that relationship? They're talking about sexual deviancy and how it affects serial killers, and they're classifying homosexuality as sexual deviancy. And she's like, "Hey, let's hold off on this," you know. And nobody knows that she's a lesbian, and that's not something that she can just outright say in this office and everything like that. And so it's this really conflicting time. And then you have Bill. Wendy passes the baton off to Bill, and Bill has the worst of everybody because his life becomes one of their investigations. And I think that is a brilliant way to describe season 2 of how will this job break you? And we see Holden broken at the beginning of season 1, and we see Bill broken at the end of season 2.
Mm. It's interesting because not only do we see like how people are saying things and not realizing how it's affecting the person that they're saying to multiple times in this season, which is really interesting because when they're talking about the sexual deviancy for Wendy, right, and she's got to come to the defense, there's that amazing scene when they're on the retreat and that FBI director is like, they're just bad from when they're a kid, and you can see it in their eyes, and like the camera's on Bill and he's like, is this my son? Is he talking about my son? And it's like, nobody knows that he's going through that, but we as the audience know that. And it's like, oh, it's so painful to watch because it's like there aren't always answers, and their job is to try and find the patterns and the answers, you know, because like all the classifications of these serial killers and their youth is where Bill's son is right now. Wetting the bed, being quiet, you know, like regressive behavior, like it's all there. And so it's like, it's excruciating to watch his character go through this. Yes, you're right. This is all, we're focusing on these characters because we focus so much on Holden on season 1. And like, that's why I love the show, is because it's focusing on the characters. It's character development. It's learning these people. It's getting close to these people that we love, these characters, and finding more about them.
In terms of finding more about people, I was originally going to frame this question around, because I already have a pick of, you know, what's your favorite scene from season 2? But I think this is instead a better jumping point, in that I think that there is the interaction with Manson. I think is where the whole season sort of comes together. That's for me, that is the single point in the season through which every other point flows. And it also ties into what Manson writes in the book for the quote unquote autograph, where he says, you know, while you sleep, I'm in your kids' heads. And there's this masterful portrayal of Manson, but I think that it all gets to this idea of the fact that Manson is your paragon of somebody who said one thing, did another, can lie to your face, and exhibits all of these things, but never, quote unquote, did anything wrong that got him in prison. His big thing was influence. And so I think that there's a really fascinating layer to that while we're talking about this, how the whole season is, you know, you're compartmentalizing, you're keeping things apart, you're figuring out what classifications are and everything. But when you look at Manson specifically, you think to yourself, it forces you to challenge that very notion that of the whole show of, was he just born this way? Like, the guy is just, he both is every classification and defies all of them. So is all of this eventually what, where does it all really pay off in the end? Especially because we know, contrasted against all of this, is BTK is still operating in the background and completely flustering them. They have, and he's going to evade detection for so long that you have, you have these whole things of when they find these answers, they consider them authoritative. They have these tapes, they have these things, they're building this database. But in the end, does it really work? And I just think the Manson scene brings all of that to a head.
I was disappointed with the Manson scene.
Oh, no.
I was absolutely disappointed.
Breaking my heart.
After we saw the scene, I was just like, what a letdown. What a waste.
Wow.
Like, so much buildup with almost no payoff. I was
Hard disagree.
furious. I was furious with that episode because, like in season 1, they mentioned Manson a handful of times. Like, but his name's there. Like they want Manson. In the first episode of season 2, the new director says, "Who do you want? Who's at the top of your list?" And without even thinking, Groff goes, "Manson." He's like, "I'll get you Manson." And boom, he does it. He gets him Manson. So much of the story was leading up to this point. And they got a fantastic actor, just an amazing actor to play Manson. He's so good at playing Manson. He played him twice.
Mm-hmm.
And then the scene is like 30 seconds long.
What?
Okay.
It was a long scene.
No, oh my good Lord. No, it wasn't. Watch it again. It was not a long scene.
It was not a particularly long scene, but it was an incredibly impactful scene. And what was, the thing is, I'm going to let Brandon take the lead on this one because I already know I'm just going to wind up sounding like I'm just like, how dare you challenge my opinion sort of thing. Brandon, why don't you illuminate for Tristan why that's a great scene?
I think it's really interesting. Like, again, so I don't know much about Manson to the point where I knew that Quentin Tarantino was making a movie about Manson, but it was like 2 hours and 10 minutes into Once Upon a Time in Hollywood before I'm like, oh, this is that Manson movie he was talking about. So like, I don't know anything about the guy. I don't know anything that's going on. But to me, it's really interesting to watch that scene because he's the guy that defies the mold, right? And it's not just that scene. It's the scene combined with the other guy where he's sitting alone. Manson convinced the guy to kill and they interview him.
One of his cult followers. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I did. The name is. We're all having trouble with names in this episode. But yes,
That's
I know.
fine.
Yeah, I know who you talk about.
So it's the two scenes combined that elevate each other because they're both talking about it from different points of view, right? But like the end result is the same, and they're learning about this guy who gets off on the crimes in a different way, and that's what's important about this job is you can't fit every single one of these people into a small little box because nobody's the same and nobody does these killings for the same reason and nobody does it in the same way. Nobody has the same kinds of patterns. And they have to talk to people like this guy, and it's important to listen to people like this because it can help them to realize other motivations for what they do. But
the thing is that also, yes, they can find some that like if there are like 3 murders somewhere, there are certain things they can look for, and certain types of personalities and stuff that they can look for. But to your point, Brandon, Kemper even says you're only studying the ones that you've caught. You're not studying the ones that you haven't. Which, of course, you take on the surface level to mean, oh, here's BTK going on, and he's the guy they're not going to catch for the longest time. But that, in and of itself, is the most incredible consideration because you always have to wonder, is there somebody operating out there who just hasn't been caught yet? Because there's got to be. There has got to be somebody who's doing this, who is just paying attention and adapting, and therefore won't be caught. Because, again, I get back to Robert Hansen, the spy who spied for years and years from inside the FBI for the Russians. He, like anybody who knew him, he was a devoutly religious man with a wife and family. He was a great man, career FBI guy, all of this stuff. Everybody thought he was great. And his double life was he was going off and selling spies out to the Russians and getting them killed left and right. So there are Manson and Kemper wind up illustrating that point, that the only people you're studying are the ones who, in a sense, failed. There's a reason Jack the Ripper was so fascinating for so long, and still is to a lot of us, is he never got caught. How did he not get caught? How is it possible?
But this is what's going on in Atlanta, right? Like,
right.
You know, like the 29 deaths or whatever the final number ended up being of all these kids, like based on what I've read of the case after the fact, that's probably not all the same guy, right? It's somebody who's taking advantage of the situation that's going on, which is equally fascinating.
Right. That it could be that they're blinded by their own obsessive search for these things. That because Holden has fallen into that trap before. And so it would make sense, you know, here we are in season 2, Holden's got this myopic vision. It must be this. We will solve the problem. But Manson and the others are the problems they can't solve.
That was one reason why I really liked how they handled BTK in this season, and the Holden and Ford and Wendy's response to BTK is they were very wrong. Their profile was very wrong, and they made that apparent. Like, that wasn't a mistake from the writers.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they thought at the time. Like, they have Holden say that this guy is clearly can't handle relationships, so he's not married, and he can't hold down a job, so he's probably just a laborer. BTK was married. He had a job. He could exist in society very easily, and I should say he could pass in society. Mm-hmm. And then you have Bill in the car, like where like the person who was shot 3 times in the face says, like, I'm scared I'm going to see him around town or at church. And Bill immediately says, this guy does not go to church. BTK went to church. He was a leader in the church. Like, this is season 2 reinforcing the idea that these guys aren't experts yet. Like, they're trying to be experts. The experts don't exist. And so they're still going to get things wrong. They're still going to they're still going to misdiagnose. And they're gonna profile wrong, and they're gonna make wrong decisions, and that's the beauty of it. And I liked it. I liked it more in BTK with that respect than in other respects that have been mentioned.
Very diplomatic, not to mention how wrong you were about Manson. But aside from that,
I just wanted more. I wanted more. That's the thing, is that I loved what we saw. I just wanted more. I could have had an entire episode of just them interacting with Manson, and I thought it was so crazy how unprofessional Bill was in that scene. It pissed me off. It pissed me off as I was watching it, because I knew that him being unprofessional was going to cut the scene short.
But that is also that also gets to the idea of, we're sitting here talking about, will this job break you? That's the moment where Bill snaps. Mm-hmm. I'm done. I can't do this, because he's just kept everything so locked up for so long. But also, I guess I love the scene as it is, and I also love the fact that it left me wanting more. I agree with you. I came out of it and I said, wait, am I going to see him again? And for all I know, if we get season 3, we will go back to Manson. This was just a little taste. But I would rather have a 5-minute scene with a perfect portrayal of Manson than 45 minutes of, okay, I got it. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
I don't like that it's an either or situation. I don't like it. I know. Like, it's 5 greatness, 45 mediocre. Why can't we have 45 great minutes?
I understand that, but but the thing is that also lends the air of authenticity to the show for me, because Brandon, you say you don't know anything about Manson. I've read a lot about Manson. Manson is a fascinating figure, and if anything, throughout history is one of the most compelling arguments for demonic possession to have ever existed. And not the only, but one of. But there's a truth to the fact that Manson was notoriously difficult to interview. And they even talk about that going in, that basically Manson loves to play with people, and they're all gluttons for fame. Once they're found, they love the attention, and they're always going to dictate the terms, portraying him in such a way that the interview with him is extremely difficult, that he enjoys the chaos that he manages to create, that Bill is the one that gives him the wedge to know that he's won this confrontation, because everything with Manson was about winning, was about controlling. And so for Manson, this is a win for him. And if it had gone on for 45 minutes, then it just becomes the Manson show. And this isn't just the Manson show.
But like Manson's also that one that cops are just like even more disgusted with. Like if you go back to that scene in season 1, when they show his picture, like they aren't really reacting when they're in their road school. And when they show the picture of Manson, they're all just like, oh, and they all start like, bah, boo, when his picture comes up on screen, right? Mm-hmm. So, he's the one that defies, because he doesn't fit into a box.
I would actually, Brandon, just before we move forward from this point, if you haven't read a lot about Manson, I would actually encourage you to read the book Helter Skelter, which was co-written by the guy who prosecuted him. Fascinating book. Absolutely fascinating. Or just see the movie Helter Skelter.
Have either of you seen the interview with Manson that this portrayal was based off of?
No.
If I have, I've forgotten it. It's a long time
It's fascinating.
ago.
It's fascinating. And I definitely, if you don't want to watch the whole thing, I definitely suggest like going on YouTube and searching Manson Mindhunter comparison, and it shows it side by side, and it's pretty great. It's pretty great what they lifted. It's a lot like the Kemper interviews.
Right, which, I mean, it's always fascinating too, because this entire show is predicated on the dramatization of reality. And so it has no commitment to be a documentary, but when it crosses that line and gets into the real world, I think it just has that obligation. And the thing is, just to sort of round it out, the one thing we haven't really spoken about in depth that I think we should before we go is the Atlanta murders themselves, and all of the things that they talk about, and all of the things that they presume through it. And I think that there's also a very interesting, obvious angle about race that ties into it. And so I wanted to just put it out on the floor of, if you were to try to put into words the main thrust of what they're saying with the Atlanta investigation, what would it be? Tristan, I'll kick that one over to you.
You mean like, what's the point of showcasing the Atlanta storyline in the show?
Well, yeah, thematically, how does it tie? Why is this the driving force in this season? They could have gone to 79. They could have gone to 81. They could have gone to, the disappearance of Adam Walsh, or something. Like they had any choice. Why do you think that they chose specifically this Atlanta situation?
I might not be the best person to ask about that, because this was probably my least favorite part of the season, was the Atlanta stuff.
Okay.
I didn't really dig on at the Atlanta stuff a lot, because I found the situation fascinating. I found it heartbreaking, and I felt like it was an interesting place to take these characters, because they wanted to take their pseudo expertise and put it to practice. That I found very interesting, but I felt like it wasn't executed very well, and I felt like we spent way too much time there with almost no payoff. And I think that was the hard part for me with enjoying this aspect of it, because there was a lot that I liked of season 2. I really liked Bill's storyline. I really liked Wendy's storyline. I really liked what was going on at the FBI with the new director. And I really liked that we showcased the plight of these moms in Atlanta, about how their children are dying, their babies are dying, and no one cares. And the horrible relationship between the cops in Atlanta and the black population, and specifically in certain neighborhoods. I mean, like even with Jim, when Holden and Jim are driving in the car, he says he's like, yeah, like not every neighborhood gets the same kind of police attention or resources. And right off the bat, you're just like, boom. And then we see another retired detective who, you know, is trying to justify what's going on, but at the same time is, you know, like playing devil's advocate, where it's just like, yeah, he's like, they're right to distrust police officers, but this is the situation we're in. I found all of that fascinating. I found all the boom of Atlanta about how they wanted to sweep things under the rug. All that was fascinating, but I just felt like their time could have been spent more wisely on this. Like you talked about the dramatization of real life events. If you're going to dramatize real life events, do it in a way that is more structured with more payoff. Because if you can't, obviously they can't have real life payoff because this was never solved. And so if you know that you can have real life payoff, then dramatize it into a character payoff. Because it's just, I felt like we were wasting time having Bill go back and forth and having a division between Holden and Bill, when I'm just like, okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to have the Atlanta storyline? Are we going to have the Bill storyline? I felt like they tried to have their cake and eat it too. And so I feel like it was very muddled. It was very convoluted. And also there was a lot of points where I did not like the direction. And so this is my stupid long answer to say, what does Brandon think?
Well, okay, so I love this, and I think that this is the perfect place for them to take season 2, okay? Because this is the sophomore year of this story, and, like, the ultimate goal of what they're doing is to apply it to real life. And so they jump the gun and get involved because Holden gets, you know, pulled in by somebody, and Holden's a person who cares. Holden is a caring person. You know, but the fact of the matter is they still don't quite know what they're doing, so they're making the mistakes as they go. And it's really interesting to watch that, because it's like they're not the only ones that are making the mistakes, but they're learning from this case. Like the cops in general are making mistakes that are going on. Like they're not interviewing the right people, they're not investing enough in the situation. But I don't know, like, to me, this is perfect. When I said last time, when I watched this season for the first time, I didn't know that this was a true story. I didn't know that this is a true case that had happened in the 80s. But so when I got that information at the end of the season, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is something that really happened. Holy smokes. But to me, the fact that we didn't get a proper conclusion and they chose a case where they didn't get a conclusion is the perfect payoff for the season, because they still need to refine their work. And part of the problem by not refining their work is because they keep getting involved in stuff that's happening now, and Holden can't focus on the interviews, and the interviews are where they're going to be able to fine-tune their questioning, fine-tune their profiling.
Right.
But because they're distracted, they're not being able to do that. I mean, the other aspect is, like, as much as I love the story that's going on, it was also a very different experience watching it 6 months ago or 8 months ago, and then watching it now post George Floyd's death and what's going on in the States right now. It's a very different experience, and I felt differently watching it, but it still hit a chord with me in a completely different way, and I still loved it just as much. You know, if not probably even more this time around.
From my perspective, I agree with the angle that having it end on a case that didn't resolve is an important point for season 2. I think that this is also, we follow all of their lives along to see that they're also not ready from a personal level to truly get involved with something like this. And I think that there is there's undeniably a racial component, of Atlanta itself, but also an unawareness. You know, Bill and Holden come from a world where they don't, operate in that same sort of mindset, and to take them and put them in a situation where they're forced to realize that it's a problem, I think is important. But I think that more than anything, it's something that does show, I'm agreeing with Brandon here, how unprepared they are to go out into the field. And there's even conflict earlier in the season where Wendy is saying, no, it's supposed to be about the interviews. You have to get these interviews done. This is about the work. You can't get involved in stuff. And, just that sort of constant push and pull. If Bill had been the one to go to Atlanta, this is that sort of different result, I think, of he would have said, I have to take it up to the chain of command. But Holden immediately wants to tell people, yes, I'll figure it out. I will fix this for you. I'm going to be the superhero. And it's not. He's never going to, he can't do that. He's gotten them into a situation that they'll never be able to resolve to their liking. I just think it's fascinating from that aspect.
And I think thematically, I'm not disagreeing with you guys. I'm really not. I think everything that you're saying is spot on about like what the characters are going through, why they chose a case that didn't have a finale to it or a satisfying ending. Everything you're saying is spot on thematically. What I'm talking about is mainly from a production standpoint and what's the word I'm looking for? A structure, like mainly a structure of the season, the structure of the characters interacting, and the production and timing and pacing of the season. I feel like if we spent 3 episodes on Atlanta and they failed spectacularly, and that's all that it was, I would have been as happy as a clam. I think, like, wow, like of course that this doesn't have an end. They bit off more than they could chew. They're getting too big for their britches. Wendy's absolutely right. They got to focus on the interviews. Everything you're saying is correct, but I think we spent too much time in Atlanta because like if you're, yeah,
no, I was going to say, you know what? It turns out we agree, because while I'm agreeing with everything that Brandon is saying, I agree with you too that at certain points it seems to be grinding slower than it needs to. And so it almost seems like, as much as I'm not a proponent of this sort of thing, it almost seems like maybe we could have had one less episode this season, or had a denouement episode where everybody calls each other out and they have an argument about why they failed. Like Atlanta should have been, the end of the Atlanta thing should have been, penultimate. And then we have a full bull session where they air their grievances with each other about those sorts of things. And they end season 2 with, is the band going to get back together? And they walk out.
I think that would have been absolutely great. I think my thought process was Atlanta in the middle and Bill dealing with family issues and the toddler dying at the end. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that's where my brain was at. But I like your idea. Like we needed at least one episode at the end of exactly what you're talking about, like of them arguing, the band's together, are we going to stay together? Because that was one major criticism of mine of season 2, was that what made season 1 so great was the 3 of them together, was Wendy, Bill, and Holden. And we barely got that in season 2. And now I understand that I'm not saying that we needed just season 1 over again, but the dynamic of the 3 of them was so special and lightning in a bottle. And I like that Wendy was talking about it. Like you need to be here. You need to be doing interviews. You can't be doing this. I agree with what you guys are saying about that. But I think it's just spending too much time in Atlanta with not enough payoff, even though I know that's the point. And not having the 3 of them together, and then having ambiguity, and not having that penultimate episode. Not having that ultimate episode after a penultimate Atlanta investigation. I think that's my frustration with season 2, in a nutshell.
That makes sense. And I agree with it. But with this being our penultimate episode of House of Fincher, we come to the inevitable 2 questions that we all dread for the end. And I'm going to toss both of them out there to you first, Brandon. The first question, where do you see Fincher? And what do you rate the season?
This season is a bajillion out of 5.
Okay.
I love this.
Okay.
I love this season. I think it's really great. So, but where do I see Fincher? So I think that this season of this show has the best thing that Fincher has ever directed in it.
You're going to steal my answer. I know you're going to steal my answer, but keep going.
The scene where Bill is in the front seat of that truck interviewing the survivor of the BTK killing is like, I don't know how long that is, but it's like 10 or 12 minutes or whatever, that scene.
It's one pod race.
It is the absolute most captivating and compelling thing I've ever watched in my life. And it is so well done. And, you know, what Tristan said, he messaged me before, was that, like, they were supposed to show the face, but Fincher edited around it, which I think was the right decision. But that sound, the sound design of that scene with that train just building up the tension as the story goes along is just absolutely outstanding. And I think that's where I see Fincher in this season, is that sound design and the editing of that scene. Wow, that is just jaw-dropping stuff.
Tristan, Brandon gave your answer. So what do you rate the season?
Well, I thought we said we were going to rate seasons.
Oh, that's right.
We didn't rate season 1. But like if season 1 was 5, you know, like I'm not saying it was, but if season 1 was 5,
it was.
You know what I'm saying? Like I'd probably say season 2 is like 3.5.
Oh dear Lord!
Like with a with a little heart emoji on Letterboxd. But like for my answer though, like with that scene, like Brandon, I agree with you. I love that scene in the car, and you can definitely see him in the sound design, in the angles, the editing. It was very reminiscent of some of the Gone Girl editing, where, like when there's one specific scene in Gone Girl where we're hearing her diary, and she's, she thinks that would he ever hurt me? I'd feel safer with a gun. And, like they're getting ready for bed. He's brushing his teeth, and the editing is just absolutely perfect, because like right before his eyes leave the frame, like normally you would cut away from something when someone's eyes leave the frame. But in this scene, they cut to it as soon as his eyes leave the frame in Gone Girl. And that kind of editing was very reminiscent in this truck scene. And one thing that like really screamed Fincher to me was that train. I was like, that train is just a bit too loud. And just like when they were in the bar, when Wendy sees her girlfriend for the first time, like in that bar, I'm just like, wow, geez, this ambient audio is just a little bit too loud, and they're a little bit underlit. I was like, oh, Fincher.
I too will fixate on that truck scene, and the moment that always hits me. I love so many things about it. I love noticing that Jesus is carved into the rifle butt, and the guy woodworking, talk about how he's a woodworker and everything. But there's a specific moment in that scene where the guy, doesn't want to show his face. He's asked to turn the mirror away. Things are starting to get a little bit more agitated, and the local police guy turns around. You don't see the guy's face, but you see and stay focused on that local police guy turning around with a very, very sympathetic look, trying to reach out to him, trying to be human with him. Yeah. Bill maintains, I'm not going to look. But that moment where that guy turns around actually called all the way back to me for Seven, because Seven has so many moments of those looks, and I, as I'm talking about it, I think of when, Detective Mills turns around to talk to John Doe when they're in the car ride in Seven, and just something about the way it was staged, totally different circumstances, totally different emotion. But I could look at those two things and say, is that the same director? And that's the weird thing, I know, but that's the sort of thing that jumps out.
Like when you called out the Zodiac lifting his leg and Kemper lifting his
right.
leg.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's little similarities.
I also love how there's soft moments with Bill. Like, I know that Bill kind of portrays himself as a hard ass, but there's certain times when he's with his wife and when he's with his his friends and everything like that. Like in that moment when like the guy is talking behind him saying, like, I should have done something, I shouldn't have played possum. Bill says, we would have lost you both.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like he tried, like, there's no reason for Bill to reaffirm this guy's decision making other than to be a human being, to say it's okay. Like, you're going through a lot of pain. You'll always have this pain, but it's fine. You made the right decision. You did what you needed to do to survive. Like, now, granted, a cynical point of view would say, like, oh, he just wants to get information out of him. But Bill has other ways of doing that. And we haven't really seen this side of Bill before, because he usually interviews the murderers. And he has nothing but contempt for the murderers. That's why Holden does a much better job in the interviews. And I feel like this is a situation where Holden would get nervous and flustered and screw up, but Bill knows how to connect with people on a human level, not on a fascinated bug under a microscope level.
Yeah, I agree with you. Holden would have been the one to say, well, do you think you could have gotten the gun in a different situation? How much did it hurt when you got shot?
He totally would have said that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Before we take off here, though, I wanted to call out the one great little moment and one moment that I didn't like. So the great moment that I really loved as well is after Bill has made the crosses and he looks down, and the cross is in the same angle and the same camera shot as the chalk on the ground.
Yeah.
In the basement.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who directed that scene, but again, just you'd forgotten about that plot point, and to just call it back with a mirror image is just like heartbreaking again.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wonderful. I love it. The part that I didn't like is, I don't know, I caught it on the first viewing. I don't know if you guys did or not, but when they get to the episode and they're on the highway and they're trying to search for the body and whatnot, and all the reporters show up, and then the last shot is the black guy looking, like, turning around and looking directly at the camera. I'm like, oh, that's the killer. I caught it on the first viewing.
That's interesting. I definitely think that they would have put something like that in there to test the audience, I guess you could say. Yeah, mm-hmm. I know the moment you're talking about. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I'm like, that's him. Like, they're talking about how the guy likes to come, and they just left it on him a little too long. Yeah, he's the killer, and then he turned out to be the killer. I'm like, oh, I called it.
Yeah. See if you're paying
attention.
attention.
Did either of you catch that first time?
Yeah.
Or were you surprised on the rewatch?
Seeing if you're paying attention, and seeding those sorts of things through there. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that on the first time. I actually haven't rewatched it yet.
Oh man.
Well,
Cut
I mean, so
out.
you guys, no, I rewatched the first 3 episodes because this is a David Fincher podcast. Like, you guys watch the whole season. I just watched the Fincher episodes.
No, I just have incredible recall. It's fine. It's fine.
Oh, you want to test recall? You want to test recall?
I have total recall, but without the machine that Arnold Schwarzenegger needed. But what I need people to do who are listening is, if you want to reach out to me online, you can find me as Kessel Junkie on your social network of choice. And you can find me on the Nerd Party co-hosting Aggressive Negotiations, a Star Wars podcast with Matthew Rushing. But that's where you can find me. Brandon, where can people find you?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon Matella. You can find me over on Trek FM with a show called The Line, which is all about Star Trek Picard. You can find me on the United Federation of Podcasts Network with a show called Franchise Fatigue, which is all about movies, remakes, and sequels. And we're looking forward to having John Mills on to talk about some Planet of the Apes movies. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then you can find me over on the Fandom Podcast Network, as well as in our own independent feed with a show called Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast. We're very much like this podcast. We go through Hitch's films in chronological order.
Tristan, where can people find you?
You can find me under the username The Insane Robin on a couple of different places. Letterboxd is probably the most fun, but also Twitter. You can find me on this network with 2 archive shows at thenerdparty.com. One called Nerd Nuptial, which is a show that I hosted with my wife, where we actually talked about Mindhunter. So definitely go and search for those, because we go very much in depth in our own point of views. And also Punch It, Writing in Star Trek, which is a show about writing in Star Trek. It's a lot of fun. And also, I just want to go on record, because I didn't get to say this during the show. I think Bill Tench, I know this might sound hyperbolic, and so I'm going to try to lessen it a little bit. I think Bill Tench is one of the greatest characters created in the past decade.
Agree.
I really do. I really do believe that.
Agree.
I agree. He
He
doesn't get enough attention. He does not get enough attention for it.
Just like great character actors like Holt McCallany don't get enough attention during their careers. Exactly. It's insane. He's another JT Walsh. I see his name and I go, yep, he's going to be great. Yep. Absolutely agree. So, you know what? As you can tell, if you have the opportunity as we get into Mank, we would love to hear from you. You know where to reach us. And with a little bit of profiling, we'll know where to reach you. Thank you for joining us for House of Fincher.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.